You're listening to the Dudes and Dads Podcast, a show dedicated to helping men be better dudes and dads by building community through meaningful conversation and storytelling. And now, here are your hosts, Joel DeMott and Andy Lehman.
Joel, welcome back to this is our final episode of the season.
Season 2 coming to a hot end, Andy.
It's been it's been a long year. I mean, we've gone through a lot this year.
It's been a year.
We're going to talk a little bit about that on tonight's episode. But first, Joel, I want to welcome you back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm 100% corona-free now.
Are you sure?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Honestly, I just felt like I had a bad head cold for a little while. So I'm consider myself fortunate amongst the many who've battled this whole thing. But yes, we're back. We're in the studio, thankfully. We always like to be back here in person if possible. And we're also excited about the couple guests that we have this evening, which we'll be getting to here shortly. But before we do, Andy, let's do a quick catch-up, shall we?
What's brewing? What's brewing? What's brewing? What's brewing?
What is brewing? Okay, thanks, Hattie. Well, Joel, it was bound to hit. Both of us ended up getting the coronavirus.
It was bound to happen, I guess.
So
you're feeling okay.
I'm feeling okay. You're feeling okay.
I'm feeling okay. But I will say, it was another one of those situations where we as a whole household, were doing the e-learning thing, and we've been together for a while. And here's the other little thing. Of our 4 children, you don't know this yet, Andy, of our 4 children, 2 are positive, 2 came back with negative test results. So that means that one of my kids has to stay out of school even longer now.
Oh, man.
And I have never, I'm going to put it out there. I have never been so frustrated with a negative test result.
Well, and I know that was for us too. It was like, okay, so if we're gonna get this, let's get it and be done with it.
Yep.
Because no good if we're negative tests. Let's just get it over with.
Yep. I know it.
And so yeah, same here. We had just kind of a headache and a head cold, but it's good to be done with that and back in the studio.
I agree. So hey, we're so glad to be back with all of you this evening. And Andy, the other special thing we've got going on this evening, and we always ask for this, we seldom get it, but it happens from time to time. We get legitimate feedback on an episode.
We do, and you can leave us a voicemail too, 574-213-8702. Again, that number is 574-213-8702. So let's listen to that voicemail.
Hi, guys. Just calling with a bit of feedback for you from your episode about positive parenting. I really appreciated what you guys had to say about maintaining and modeling positive attitudes for our kids as we are enduring the pandemic and just other difficulties and disappointing things happening in life. And it reminded me of a few episodes prior to that when you had Matt Miller on the show, and he said that he had read that the pandemic has really just revealed what was already there. And I think that goes hand in hand with your positive parenting episode. As believers, I think that the pandemic has truly revealed all of the other idols that we have built our lives around and built our lives on. And so we just have this amazing opportunity right now to just really show our children how important it is to only hold on to things that are immovable and unshakable. And as Christians, we know the thing is only Jesus, and just modeling for them how when life gets difficult and our foundation is shaken and we don't know how to plan, that we can go to a God who is unshakable and we can find rest in him. So keep up the good work, guys. Appreciate all that you do, and hope my feedback is helpful.
Well, that's the episode. Have a good night, everybody. No, Julie, that was awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I the strong word there used, but like cultural idol stuff. That's what and I think we will be touching on that tonight. I can almost guarantee in our conversation with everything that's going on, year in review, thinking through what's really important to us, right? What's the big deal? So
yeah, because it seems like we had talked a lot about in that episode about trying to keep a positive approach, but I think what she said is correct. Like it brought up what was either really important to us or not. So it was a good time to look at our lives.
Absolutely. And Andy, I did forget just in the What's Brewing segment, we also like to we also like to feature. You can see it. Can we see it here? Yes. Tonight's coffee comes to us from Union Coffee Co. We're drinking their Colombian Union Coffee Co. Brought to us by check this out, Andy, the Nazarenes.
Really?
I didn't know the Nazarenes were dabbling in coffee these days, but they are. So Union Coffee Co. comes to us out of the Phoenix, Peoria, Arizona area. And they've got this great coffee shop, and we're drinking their coffee this evening. So thank you, Union Coffee Co. Appreciate it. I'm probably not going to sleep now. So,
well, we are tonight going to be talking a little bit about a year in a review, and so we brought two guests on tonight, not one, but two guests. We're going to have Gene Troyer and Chris Knight. Joel, you want to introduce them real quick here?
Yeah, Andy, they say never meet your heroes, and I that wisdom to the wind a few years ago. And to be honest with you, Chris and Gene have only disappointed me a couple of times. So I'm so grateful to have these gentlemen on the show. So let's see. We're going to start with Gene Troyer. Gene Troyer, he has been married to his lovely wife, Brenda, for 32 years. He has two kids, Cody, 30, Megan, who is 25. He's been in pastoral ministry for 12 years. Most recently, his pastoral efforts have led him to plant Restore Church, located in beautiful downtown Goshen. They're going to be at the 3-year mark here, beginning of this coming year. So exciting times for them. He serves as the lead pastor there, and let me just say, a brother from another mother, and a guy that I like to get around a fire pit every once in a while with and just pick his brain. So grateful to have Gene on here this evening. Hey, Gene, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Then we got number 2, but number 1 in my heart, Chris Knight. Chris has been married to his, I wrote this in terrible, silver marker. So he, Shauna, did I say that right, Chris? Yes, your wife?
Yes, you did.
Yes,
yep.
All right. So you've been married for 25 years. 2 kids, Corbin, who's 20, Brennan, who's going to be 18, or actually is 18 of the time of this. So your son Corbin, daughter Brennan, and then you've been in pastoral ministry in general. You've had a couple of different hats that you've worn at that time. Pastoral ministry for 24 years. You're currently, do they call you lead or senior pastor there at Wakarusa Missionary Church?
They call me Chris.
Good.
But yeah, I think the other title is probably senior pastor.
Senior pastor.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And Chris, how long have you been at Wakarusa there?
I am in my 5th year already.
Golly, guys, time flies because I know you.
It does.
I know you know this is true, but man, I think about Restore Church launching, and then Chris, you also beginning your role there at Wakarusa Missionary, and it seems like only yesterday. So, Chris, again, welcome. Glad to have you with us here this evening. We are really wanting to have a conversation with 2, and I'm going to use all kinds of terms. Seasoned veterans. I'm trying to dance around. They're not.
Be so kind.
They're not that old. These guys are not that old. I want to be very clear, but they've got a lot of experience, and I think it's just helpful to have some people who between all of us here on the show tonight. We all have different contacts in the community. We're interacting with different folks, but when it comes to leading an organization in 2020. And particularly caring for people's emotional, mental, spiritual needs, and yes, some very practical physical needs as well. I think we can all, from our various spheres of experience, can have a good conversation this evening. So, guys, let's start off with a real softball lob here. And Gene, I'll start with you first. As a pastor, as a father, as a husband in 2020, what do you think, what's one thing you can say that you have learned about yourself, given everything that has unfolded within this year?
Well, to answer that with one answer is particularly difficult. Oh my goodness. Well, I'll tell you, I've been leading people for a long time and been in different leadership positions in business as well as in the church. And I thought I had a pretty good handle on, a bruised ego. I thought I'd gotten past some of those things. And I would just tell you that I have been a bit surprised at how emotionally difficult this year has been. I've been through, through business and through the church world. I've navigated some pretty difficult times. And yet this year has taxed my varied experiences. I've been surprised at how devastating some of these experiences have been. But at the same time, the resilience of stepping into those places and coming out, realizing that I'm human, has also been probably a really good thing, actually. It helps when you're leading people. It's helped me to be able to have more empathy, perhaps, than this year, than prior to this year. So I don't like it, but I think it's been helpful in that respect.
So, Chris, I'll give you the same challenge here to in focusing on one thing, but what you've learned about yourself, what has kind of come to the surface in your own self-awareness in this past year.
Sure. Yeah, I would say one thing that I've learned about myself is that I'm not as patient as I thought I was. I'm a pretty even keel emotional guy. I mean, my highs are like, yeah, my lows are like, oh, that's too bad. But I found that my lows are lower than they've ever been, and it's easy to get discouraged, easy to get depressed. I think probably the one thing that I'm very grateful for in the season is that I stopped measuring success the way I used to. When you used to measure success by numbers, people who show up to your church on a Sunday, man, if that's how you're measuring success in ministry anymore, it's got to be a discouraging year.
Womp womp.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah. And I'll put this question out to both of you, just to push into that piece a little bit. Does it feel like, in general, in your ministry life, like the scorecard is changing? How are you both thinking about "quote unquote" success? And I mean, back up from that word, just faithful obedience, I guess. If you were to kind of like, what does faithful obedience and legitimate pastoral responsibility look like now? Are the ways you're thinking about that and being "quote unquote" successful in those areas, is it looking different? And Gene, I'll put that to you first.
Well, it's certainly looking different. Joel, I actually just recorded our message for this coming weekend, this afternoon. And this was part of that conversation where I talked about how everything has shifted. And what I used to think was important, I still think it's important, but it doesn't really matter if I think it's important, because it is not a measuring, it's the measurements, the metrics that we used to look at have shifted so dramatically that honestly, if I would be able to just, here's the bottom line, Joel. All right. The bottom line is that it is hard to know how, if you're being successful. It is like, I'm a list guy. You know, I like lists. I like to check them off and know that I got that accomplished. And I don't even know what should be on the list anymore sometimes. Like, I'm just wondering, like, okay, what's important here? Bottom line, I know that people are important. People are important. So I'm leaning into those relationships. I'm finding that people need things from me that are different than they used to be. And I'm also finding that my team needs me differently than they needed me in the past. And so, yeah, I mean, the metrics have changed, and this is, it's a new ballgame. It really is.
So, Chris, yeah, so similar question. I mean, how are you thinking about the scorecard? About I'm using that term. I think you know what I'm saying. When
what measures of success are you using to what's that look like?
Sure. I think relationship is always the measure of success. How are you doing in relationship? How are you doing in helping people grow in their maturity? You know, we're a part of an organization called the Relational Discipleship Network, and I really like that because they measure it in life stages. So you have somebody who is spiritually dead, and then they become a spiritual infant, a spiritual child, a young adult, and a spiritual parent. So there's always maturity that can happen, even if you have two people in a room. So my big challenge through this has been trying to develop relationships, keep relationships going, and helping people take that next life stage step so that we're not just sitting stagnant during this season of time. And that's, I mean, just as Gene said, it's just hard. You can come home after a Sunday and wonder if you're winning. I actually stopped measuring Sunday and started measuring Monday through Saturday to figure out how are we doing with relationships, because that's critical.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yep.
So, good. Chris, what are some of the ways that you are investing in people's lives during this time? You know, since it does look different than it has before.
Sure. Well, even that, and I'm sure Gene would probably say the same, even that has taken so many twists and turns. Sure. It's about as many twists and turns as the Elkhart County Health Department, it's taken for this time. You know what I mean? Because in one way, we started and everybody got on Zoom and everybody was doing Zoom, and we were waking up on Saturday mornings. They had a men's group that was on Zoom at 6 a.m. on Saturdays. Why they chose that time, I don't know, but because they wanted to be there. I was there on Saturday morning, and I would say after the first 6, 7, 8 weeks, attendance started to drop off a little bit. And then we had to find new ways to connect. Hey, let's go do this. Let's go out for a drive. Let's go sit at the park. Let's go for a walk, and so everything just has shifted, but trying to find the one-on-one, two-on-one, small group type of connections has been the way we keep trying to make those connections.
Yeah. I'm so something I'm personally challenged in right now, and thinking about mental health, right? If and I as a youth and young adult worker, like something that quote unquote keeps me up at night is really how our young people are doing, and just everybody in general. But obviously in my sphere of responsibility, I'm just thinking constantly, like, oh my goodness, so many of these students, their social interactions have dramatically changed. The things that they look forward to that are high spots in their year are either being canceled altogether or reworked. Or, I went through a pretty significant season of frustration with this past year's high school graduates as their end of year stuff was all going away, and just coming alongside of them and all of that. And so I think about those people and just kind of the mental health challenges and the disappointments and the struggle. And as I'm focusing on those things, I'll be honest with you, I did not have a real great game plan for my own mental health, from my as a pastor. Like I was, and we have, this is the pastor's disease. Am I right, gentlemen? Like, you know, we're thinking about other people. We're trying to stay focused on caring for other people. And then before we know it, it's like there's not the gas in the tank to do that because we've not had our radar up for, you know, what we ourselves need to be doing. So I put it to you, I'm wondering, guys, Gene, what has self-care looked like for you? Just trying to, you know, think through what you can do to keep yourself healthy and in as good a place as possible in this past season. What has that looked like?
I have a replenishment cycle that I have tried to stick with. And by that, I mean, all of us have certain things that we need to do on a regular basis, or sometimes it's weekly, some things are monthly, some things are, you know, every 6 months, annually. And fortunately, I have been able to be at the beach. I was in Mexico on vacation a couple weeks ago.
Please tell us more
got
about
out
that, Gene.
before
Please tell us more.
Not really bad. I'll tell you, it was a week of doing nothing that Brenda and I so desperately needed. But that's one of my replenishment things that I have to do, or I feel it, is to be in the sun and by the beach, if a couple times a year. That's one of the things I know that I have to try to work that in, and I hope that I can continue to do that. The other thing is reading, of not just, you know, us pastors, if we're going to stay fresh, we are reading all the time, and we're receiving so that we can give out. But so often I get caught, and Chris, you might too, but I get caught in this nonfiction world. Like it's always about how do I feed myself so that I can then give to my people. And I have to have times of reading junk. Why, by that I mean, like the fiction world has some great writers, and I love a good fiction book. But most of the time, I have to wait until I get on vacation. I used to have this rhythm where I would read a fiction book, and then I would read a fiction book and probably 3 other books, and then another fiction book. Try to have that rhythm of creative and imaginative fiction writing that can also then feed my creativity as I'm writing messages and as I'm talking to people. So that's some of what I've done. But you know, there has been the constant shift from, we're meeting in person, then we're meeting online, and helping my team be creative about how we make those shifts. There has been less time for replenishing myself, and yet I'm honestly, I feel like I'm in a really good place. And I think it's just by the grace of God that He's sustained me during this time. And I don't mean that to sound cliche or anything, but it is interesting. Sometimes I'm kind of sick. Like I feel like I'm sick because I'm thriving in the middle of these really difficult times. But you know, some of it is just this challenge of getting beyond it, getting through it, maximizing what we do during this time. I think it's really helpful for mental health to feel like you can find those small wins and realize that, yes, even now, God is inspiring us. God is giving us fresh ideas, and I just believe that'll continue, but we have to keep leaning into it.
So, Chris, same question for you. What have you been doing to keep mental health up?
Well, you know, and let me just draw attention real fast that this is not just a pandemic. This is also an election year. Mm-hmm. And so,
yeah.
I mean,
right.
Honestly, everything
right.
everything that's been going on, I'm a guy who usually is plugged in. I love news. I love the newspaper probably more than I like reading. I read the online newspapers more than I like to watch the news. But I found myself just having to intentionally unplug. This has been a
Yeah.
roller coaster season. So, I mean, it's an election year, it's a pandemic. My dad passed away in July, but he wasn't
That's
just my
right.
dad, he was
Yeah.
also a staff member who handled pastoral
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
So, who now handles pastoral care? And my dad's gone,
Right.
pandemic, elections, people are freaking out. And I found myself just getting consumed by that all the drama going on around me.
Mhm.
I found that instead of sleeping in, I had to get up earlier.
Mm.
I found that I now enjoy the mornings more. I'll get into the office earlier. I'll head to the coffee shop earlier. I just need that first couple of hours to unwind, tune out, tune into the Lord. Like Gene says, I mean, whether it's a book that's nonfiction, it's not work. It's a podcast that's just about some randomness, or something. Just get out of the ministry world for a
Yep.
little
Yeah.
bit
Yep.
and let
Right.
the Lord refresh.
So I was it was a ministry related trip. I was out in Phoenix here a little while ago, and while I was out there, I was in this situation. Now, when I was there, their fall color was just coming into full, like just north of Phoenix area in Sedona. Fall color was coming in. I'm like, doggone it, I'm gonna get me a hike in, one or two of them, and I'm also gonna read. I'm gonna read something that I normally would not read. So, guys, I read Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights, his memoir that just came out. And let me just tell you, it's not normally the kind of thing that I would read. And it was great. I didn't feel guilty about it, like sitting down and reading it. Like I wasn't reading like some sort of, how-to ministry book, and instead was just literally
something that you enjoyed, something for you to get back in.
And it was just like, I'm hearing all I'm reading about the weird stories of a person's life who's definitely, just way different than I am for sure, and boy, oh boy, that was just it was a different experience. And I think just to do some sort of holy disruption, I guess, to our schedules and to our rhythms is something to think about. And now, and Kristen, as you mentioned, and again, we're so sorry for the loss of your father. That was just, it was, your dad had overcome a really serious hospital stay and illness, and then and so it was very much an up and down thing for you. I'm just wondering, what does as pastors, we walk alongside of people who are grieving all the time, and we have I think at times a unique view into the world of grief. Is grief different for you in this season, or do you think was there some things that came to you with, like you said, all the other things that are crisscrossing, plus you're losing this relationship that, I think it goes without saying that you and your dad were close, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot happened. I remember finding myself telling Shauna, my wife, and my mom, the things that I've said for 25 years to families who are walking through this, I have to now own it. I have to believe it myself because it was truth what I was telling them. I have to own that as truth for me now too. And really keep reminding myself, what would I tell somebody else right now? Okay, apply it to your life. And rest in that. And guys, honestly, I don't know how people go through this without the Lord, because I always knew that and I always said that, but now it's a whole nother thing to where I'm like, man, this is sad. It hurts. All these firsts, they hurt. But then I'm reminded of the hope that I have in Jesus. And this isn't the end.
Absolutely.
This is the beginning. And there's a reunion that will come, and we wouldn't want him back, in the condition that he was in.
Right.
And so then we stop and we celebrate. And
right on.
But
That's
believing good. What we actually know to be true and then owning it ourselves, that really took on a whole new level for me.
Yeah. Isn't it just interesting? I think it's encouraging to say, like, we're never done learning. Like, we can intellectually know some things, but then when life circumstances come to us and our knowledge and our faith collide in this experience of an everyday situation that we're in, good or bad. It's like I think I can only sort of liken it to how the disciples must have felt after Jesus left them. After he finished the earth, he had said all these things for 3 years. They had thought they figured it out. They clearly didn't figure it out, at the time. But then it had all of these really like aha moments, as they were walking forward in faith and trying to follow Jesus without him physically being there. And I just wonder, Chris, if what you're kind of explaining there, I maybe that just gives us an insight into, we don't always have all the answers, but we are given a way. We are given a way forward in Jesus, and that I agree. I don't, dude. Without faith right now, I don't know how people are doing it. I honestly
It would
don't.
be tough.
Yeah, and honestly, they aren't doing it. That's the reality, I think.
Joel, but honestly, and Andy, the whole thing that we have been talking about as a church, whether it's in this pandemic, whether this is in an election year, whether it's in a time of loss, is that we have to zoom out to see a bigger picture of what's going on. It's all perspective. When it comes to the election, the Lord used good leaders, the Lord used bad leaders to accomplish his task. But the reality is the Lord was always the one in control.
Yep.
And when we zoom out big enough to say, you know what, Lord, my goal and my job is just to be faithful every day to do the things you've asked me to do, I can stop having to worry about, is the pandemic the end of it all? Is an election the end of it all? What's going to come? And all the consumption that people are under, and zoom out and see a bigger picture. The Lord just says, hey, it's a day at a time. Thy word is a lamp unto your feet and a light unto your path. And that's the key.
Right.
I will show you the next step, not the next 10 steps down the road. And he just asks us to be faithful.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I agree with that, Chris. I mean, if you zoom out and then zoom back in, because people tend to stay out there. Oh yeah, I see the big picture now, so I'm going to stay out here. And yet it requires us to zoom back in and say, okay, what is the next right thing that I must do? What's the next right thing? What can I do how can I help the next person right here in front of me?
All right, so Gene, if you could hit the redo button on anything that you've done this year, what would that be?
Yet another deep penetrating
that's
question.
another one. I'm sorry. Yeah.
And Gene's going to go, on one thing? Yes, just one thing.
I feel like we've made a lot of good decisions. We've done a lot of things right. But I do wish, here's my wish list, right? I do wish that I could have, oh man, this requires magic skills, because I do wish that I would have had a little more insight into what some of my team members, what some of my fellow church members what some of their needs would have been. I feel like I fell short in meeting some of those. And as a pastor, that's the crux of much of what we do. We're shepherds. We care for people. And if I could push the rewind button, I would take it back to some of those interactions, some of those conversations where I would have been, and I'm a pretty gracious guy, but I do know that Chris mentioned he wishes he would have been, he's figured out that maybe he's not as patient as he thought he was. I figured out that I'm not as gracious, and I want to my attitude towards people is I've never punched anybody in the face except maybe my little brother when we were growing up. But there have been multiple times when I have been stretched
Yeah.
and so I had to figure out a way to get that away from, get that out of my system. But yeah, I mean, just peeling it back to say, wow, if I could even just have some of those interactions again, to where I could be a little more kind and gracious to those of us around us that are just in need. Yeah, that's probably one of the top things for me.
Good.
Chris, what's your redo wish, Chris?
I would probably have two. I mentioned pastoral care there earlier. Everything had to change, not just in losing my staff member, who was my dad, who was covering that, but people in the hospital. You can't go see them, and how do you let them genuinely know that you care? Because, our staff's praying for them. We're talking about them regularly. You can't even really pick up the phone and call, as much as you wanted. Just trying to read. If I could go back and do that over, I wish I had a better plan in that, because I feel like there was a disconnect and people needed relationship in that time. If I had one other redo, we were in the process of building in smaller groups. I just think, if I could go back and do it over again, we need to get smaller. Gene and I both came from larger church perspectives and now are pastoring medium, sized churches and such. But the idea of growing smaller as you grow larger is critical, because in a pandemic, the way this thing lasts is that you're still in small relationships with people, and it's trying to get more of those people involved, be more intentional about that. So if I could redo two things: pastoral care, and really had made a more concerted effort to get people into smaller groups sooner.
Hey, Chris, can I ask a question?
Oh, yes. This is good. This is good. Go for it, Gene. Go. Please do it. Go. Yes.
Hey, Chris, did you find that people were stepping back from a relationship instead of leaning in? Because that was my experience. We tried to do more smaller group relationship, enact more of that and get some things up and running, because we were in our building for I think 8 weeks, and then in our new space for 8 weeks, and then we were out for 10, and all of that was just we had new people coming. We didn't know some of these people that were coming. We didn't have we're pretty loose about tell us when you want to be connected. And so it's not like we had a guest book, an old time guest book, going down the aisle and everybody signing their names and contact information. We didn't do that. We don't do that. So we found ourselves with a core group of people, and then a whole bunch of other people that we didn't have connection with. And it seemed like when the pandemic hit, everybody sort of retreated into their homes, and it was hard to get the interaction between even some of the crews, we call them crews, but the crews that were in existence. And gradually, we all went on Zoom, but gradually we all backed off and it kind of went to nothing. I don't know, was that sort of your experience as well?
Very much so. Yeah, absolutely. We, like you, had the same policy. That is, we want people to get connected when they feel like getting connected. But we definitely saw a step back. Quite honestly, Gene, I'm gonna guess you guys were in the same boat, and even Andy and Joel. Our church staff, we often find ourselves saying, we don't even know who goes here anymore.
Yeah.
Because we've had people coming in, and I'm really careful with that. People coming in from another church because their church is closed or they don't feel like wearing a mask the whole time, and I'm just trying to be hands off and not say, hey, this is a great opportunity for us. Nah, man, I tell you what, we want people to be where they need to be, and does not mean it's our church. And so I want them to feel that, but it's been very awkward to figure out, how do we engage them? How do I minister to them, even though I treat them more like they're here on vacation, because I want to be really careful with that.
I'm so glad.
So yeah, it's been very hard.
Yeah, I'm so glad Chris said that, so I don't have to have the conversation with him after the show about the 4 families that are attending his church from my church. Right? I'm kidding.
Oh no, we connected them. Yeah, that was different.
Yeah, we've stolen them totally. We had no problem.
They're already in leadership here, so.
Oh, beautiful.
It was Gene's church.
Awesome.
It was Gene's church.
Gene's church. We're not doing
Thanks
that.
for coming. We're sending you back. Oh,
Appreciate it.
drop that one back in the river. Oh boy. Yeah. I think, and so this is actually a great segue because we're half serious and half joking about it, but there has been, and I'm sure with all of us, this conversation. We receive messages, phone calls, regular communication from a broad perspective within our congregation of, hey, if this policy changes or you do this thing differently, I know I'm worried that XYZ people are going to go somewhere else. So please, whatever you do, keep doing this, or please don't do this anymore. Whichever side it is. Because by the way, there's equally competing pushes and pulls on all sides, and I am wondering, guys. Because here's my perspective. In all of this, what has become clear to me is that ultimately people say that people, we talk about people resist change. They change. I'm not so sure that it's the change specifically, because people change stuff all the time. Hair color, hairstyle, shoes, cars, whatever. What people fear is the loss that comes with change, a sense of what might go away that they hold dear. And I'm just wondering, in these days where we're having to institute different policies, some depending on what organization we're with, but then those they vary. Other policies are handed down to us. That's like we have to do these things that are put in place. How have you guys navigated? How have you thought about, and how have you talked to your teams about responding to the either thinly veiled or very overt I don't know, call them threats if you want to, ultimatums, or just general conversations about if our church does this thing, whatever policy it might be or whatever, in this time of pandemic, then I think either we are going to go somewhere else or we are worried about other people going elsewhere. How have you guys navigated that conversation? And Chris, I will start with you.
Well, in this season, we for sure realized that a lot of people have an opinion, even more than normal.
Yep.
And I was surprised how vast the opinions were going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So we are on so many extremes. We have people that say they're not going to come back until there's a vaccine. We have people that say we're not coming if you make us wear a mask. We're not coming if you have any of those types of things, because we're all about freedom and our constitutional rights. And so as a team, we've really tried our best just to love people where they are, not engage the argument, but just, say, hey, we want you to do what's best for your family. We want to care for you in this time. And if that means you need to step back, we look through a missing list just on Tuesday in our staff meeting, and just going through and seeing who hasn't been here since the pandemic started. And that list is long, but there's a variety of reasons. And we just want to love people where they are. Some people have felt like a change of church was necessary during the season. That's fine. That's good. I want to see people stay engaged. To me, we have to chase the strays. We have to chase those who haven't landed anywhere. That's who I should be chasing. The issue is if they've left my church and they're engaged in Gene's church, I'm happy about that. I want them to be engaged where they are. It's the strays who haven't gone anywhere that I find myself concerned about. And I think that's taking on a kingdom mindset instead of a church mindset. And that's a hard shift to make, but I think it's a necessary church shift for pastors to start making.
Yeah, definitely. So, Gene, what about you? Same question.
Yeah, Chris, that's really good. I really connect with what you just described. Did everyone on your team actually agree on all the moves that you made? That's what I want to know.
Verbally, yes.
Oh, Chris, gosh, Chris should have been a politician.
Yes.
He should have been.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, same thing on our team. I mean, I've got a great team. We got on the same page. We had strong opinions in a variety, and they weren't always aligned. But at the end of the day, we got on the same page. We did what we felt was best. I mean, I have come through, like, we've been in this now since March, and the things that we've grappled with the most have really it's been interesting when we take a firm stand on something, and Chris, maybe you found this too, but when you take a firm stand on something, I hate the term weed people out, but it did sort of happen organically where, well, if I have to wear a mask to serve, because at Restore, we made a firm stand on, if you're serving or if you're on staff, a mask is required. And so we had people that just simply stepped back from serving because they didn't want to wear a mask. And that was a little, like, I'm going to be completely transparent here to say that was a little disturbing to me.
Yep.
I mean, no, it was a lot disturbing to me because really, like, this is something we can do for the other. This is something that even if you don't do it for yourself, do it for other people. Even if it's not completely effective. I'm not arguing that it's the most effective thing in the world, but it's more the principle of the matter for me. Is that if we can do something as a church that expresses love for our neighbor, then I think we ought to step into that and sacrifice for 2 hours with a piece of cloth on our face without getting too bent out of shape about it. So it's been a really a curious thing in this season to see how we all respond in ways that I think are perhaps surprising to every one of us. I've responded in ways to some things that have surprised myself. And I know I'm just confident that many of us find ourselves in the same place.
So this is I mentioned this cultural idol question earlier, and this is the thing that I bring about as a pastor. And again, I have a particular, and you guys know where I'm coming from, in general theologically, and ultimately it's like I serve the kingdom of God and not the kingdom of man primarily. That's where I get my marching orders from. It's interesting, I'm using military lingo already. But in all of this, my perception has been this, and I say this I really say this without just trying to paint with too broad of a brush or be just widely dismissive or anything like that, but hopefully a right posture of heart. I have the thing that maybe keeps me up at night as a pastor right now is the fact that I am being ripped away from the delusion that people want to serve Jesus more than elevating up their personal rights or freedoms. And this is the thing. This is the thing for me. This is what I think troubles my heart, and yet I'm grateful for the opportunity because it's given us clarity to speak to something I think that is in our culture and within Christianity. But what troubles me maybe the most is so much discussion about our freedoms, liberty, and very little discussion about the fact that we serve a rights relinquishing Jesus, and who said, "You will be great in the kingdom by the way in which you serve others, and by the way, in which you serve others, potentially to your own detriment, even."
That's right.
So, rebuke me, correct my theology. What do you think, Chris? Chris, we'll start with you.
Absolutely agree. If I could expound on that just a little bit,
Please.
I really think that this problem is our problem. It's a pastoral problem.
Mm.
We have allowed for 50 years, longer than that, but we've allowed for 50 years people to sit in our pews and not mature in their faith. They sit in their
Amen.
pews and they are spiritual infants, they're spiritual children, and not mature in their faith. And so we have to own part of that, because then it's my rights as an American versus my rights to lay down my rights, as what you're saying with regards to Jesus for the greater good. The thing that keeps me up, Joel, is very much like you're saying there, is that balance between what is my right as a pastor to have a church that's continuing to meet needs and meeting together, versus the whole idea of keeping the optics clean for those people in my community that I'm trying to reach that wonder why can the church still meet together when my company can only have 25 people in the room, but for some reason you're exempt, and you're taking advantage of that, and you're making us sicker by you doing that. And the optics of the people I'm trying to reach now have a disdain for the church, not a hope of the world for the church. And then the other side is the thing that keeps me up is trying to keep my staff safe, healthy, the people who are trying to do the ministry. So all three of those things, and it's that whole rights-based deal. But I think if we zoom out bigger and own the problem that we haven't matured the believer enough in discipleship to see that is our greatest issue.
Mic drop.
Now
right
rebuke
there.
me.
Yeah,
Mic
I
drop
know.
right there. Mic drop.
Amen and amen. Gene, what say you?
Oh man, this is like, I am chomping at the bit. This is one of the hottest topics for me right now.
Yeah.
Like I'm tracking with you, Joel, this idea that the empire of the world is to be worshiped instead of the kingdom of Jesus is grievous. And I connect with what you're saying, Chris, because it is our responsibility that we have this idea, this calling of discipleship. There is the question, though, do people want to be discipled? And I believe, yes, they do. The proof is in the pudding. Yeah. If you look at the discipleship that has happened by the US government and by Facebook over the course of the last year, oh my gosh, like they're doing a much better job. I don't get on Twitter every single day. I don't have a press conference every single day to give updates and give my opinion about everything in the world. Yep. I have 1 hour, if I'm lucky, on a Sunday morning where I have a captive audience. And yes, we all have influence on social media one way or the other. But I am astonished at the amount of discipleship, the level of allegiance that is given to our government, and it is much higher. Come on, argue with me and tell me that our allegiance, our church's allegiance, our people's allegiance to the government is not higher. Oh man, I'm going to get myself in so much trouble. It's not higher than their allegiance to Jesus.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Just look at what we're seeing online on a daily basis from the very people that are sitting in our churches.
Yes.
They're much more passionate about the rights that are being removed from them and their constitutional rights. But that's not okay. So I'm ranting, but I'm also realizing I know that part of it is our issue and our problem.
Yep.
because we've allowed for this. And we have fallen short in our discipleship methods. And we got to pull it back, and we've got to say what is most effective, and what used to work doesn't work anymore.
Yep.
And so if we want to disciple people, it takes more than just a Sunday morning. It probably means a lot of one-on-one mentoring. And I think that's the direction of the future, is a lot of one-on-one, two-on-one kinds of things.
Yeah.
Hey, can I jump
there
on?
you go.
Can I jump on that? Because I think that you just opened the door to an even bigger issue, and that is, oh shoot, I just lost what I was going to say. Come back to me, because it was really good.
As my great grandfather used to say, "Slipped a cog." That's what we say.
Yeah.
So, I'll buy you time, Chris.
Yes,
bingo. Okay, here we go.
Go.
He's got it. Go for it.
Here's the thing that I find interesting through this season is how many people say, the persecution that we're dealing with. I'm seeing my job as a pastor to prepare people for what real persecution is going to be. This is not persecution.
No.
This is
No.
minor.
No.
And we're wigging out.
Yes.
Wigging out on this kind of persecution. And we haven't even seen what a ripping open of a trumpet or a seal or whatever looks like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking we are soft.
Yep.
And we have to take serious maturing our folks in such a way as to be able to even withstand when real persecution happens.
Yep. Chris.
Absolutely. I heard another pastor I heard another pastor just point to the fact that he hopes that, I think it might have been Andy Stanley said, he hopes that the church that is truly being persecuted never hears about the response of the American church during this pandemic.
Yes.
How embarrassing would that be, right?
I
They
agree.
think we lost our marbles.
Yep. I look. And part of it is just a general. And folks, listeners, here's the deal. You're hearing what you're hearing right now is behind the green curtain, as we like to say, where I really feel as though we have first world problems in this area, where we as Western Christians are not connected to the global church all that well. We don't know what the church in Kenya or Ethiopia is going through, or the underground church in China. In my mind, and so our point of reference is a bit skewed globally when thinking about those things. In my mind, guys, and again, you tell me what you think. Until the bulldozer is at my church wall, I have a hard time talking about the church being persecuted right now. Until I actually see like a militant, some people might think I'm naive, that like they'll always, because some people say, well, it's a slippery slope. We let a few things go here, we let things go and then down the road, this is what happens. Historically, I don't know if there's you got to know some church history, but I don't know if there's a really great case for that being the instance. Usually there is things were going along there when it comes to the church, a giant upheaval or overthrow, and then and because I would say this, from my perspective, the worst day in church history happened in Milan, Italy in 313, when the Roman Emperor Constantine said Christianity is legal and we're going to build churches. We're going to build buildings to gather them. Mm-hmm. And they will be known, Christians will be known by the cathedrals at which they attend, the sacred rites in which they participate, and not, I'm a big fan of communion, baptism, and all of that, obviously. But when you started to structuralize these things, and it seems that now those things that were not primary in those functions that were not primary in the early church, when they became kind of codified later, it seems that that's what our folks are really holding on to. Like, we need to meet in the big building. We need to be able to do the big things, or it's not church. And I just think, like, if the Apostle Paul or the Apostle Peter or whatever, like, walked up to us right now, like, did a little, they just showed up, I think they'd be a little confused, guys. What do you think?
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Yeah, we've taken the church and made it a building and not a mission that the Lord has called us to. Yeah, and I think that's something that we can still work at, and I think that means a church has to not take a look at discipleship as a program of the church, but the mission of the church, not just a part of the
Right
church,
on.
but it has to be the church.
Yeah.
Because at that particular point, we start to break down that wall. And quite honestly, and I'm going to say something, and I hope my people aren't listening or ever tune in to this, because
We're
I
gonna make
might
you
be
share it on
planning a
social
church.
media, so you be careful.
I might be planning a church with Gene really soon. The reality is, I think too, once pastors started taking salaries, then we got to the point where we were like, man, we don't want to lose this. We have this good gig going on now. I love that this is my calling and I get to live it out full time.
Right.
Because I don't think we would be as effective in a large scale like this. But if the church was a micro type of church, then I think that we would be probably much more expansive when it comes to discipleship and perhaps having more impact in some ways.
Yep. Yeah.
Now edit that out.
Point.
Actually, it's funny. Andy on our machine here, what he can do is he can flag, like, to bookmark certain points in the recording process. That way we can share little snippets on social media. And I know there's a flag on that one too. So I'm terribly sorry, Chris. I'm gonna make you put your money where your mouth is. No, I agree. Like, I frequently, I have just wondered, like, am I so in bed, for lack of a better term, am I so in bed with some of the structural things? That's what this pandemic, that's what this season, that's what 2020 has brought out in me, is these questions of, the machine has to succeed for me to have a vocation. That's what it can feel like. Like, the machine as it was has to, like, I get so many people indoors in order for my paycheck to continue, or whatever, or I become quote unquote irrelevant if these certain structures that have been around break down for a while. And I just, I go to the beginning of the church. I go to the book of Acts. I go to the words of Jesus, and I'm like, I'm a little bit off course here when those anxieties come up within me, I think.
Yeah.
I think that John Maxwell jacked up the church in the late 90s when everything started to become about leadership.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden pastors started taking on leadership, and we had mission, vision, value statements for the nursery. I mean, everything had mission, vision, value statements, and you had your own mug and you had all this stuff. And all of a sudden we lost what we were thinking. I appreciate our businessmen and women. I appreciate the entrepreneurs, but the church has got a pretty simple mission, and that's tell people about Jesus and lead them to Christ and mature them in the faith so that they ultimately are reproducing themselves. It's not about our leadership status. And I don't ever want Walker's Missionary Church to be known as the church that Chris Knight is a pastor at. I want us to be known as a body of believers who are about discipleship. And I want my name to really be buried in this thing because it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's about the mission that we're on. And that's where I think churches have to get back to these roots. Yep. Now, see, Joe, now you got me all passionate.
Good.
And then you're
good.
And then,
yeah. Well,
I don't know how I'm going to go to sleep tonight.
Well, there you go. But to all your guys' points, these are things that we as spiritual leaders have to own. But then to our audience, our dudes, our dads, our families have to own within their own family. I can't. I, as a pastor, have the limitation of I can only be discipling so many people, but those people are discipling people who are discipling people. Like the idea. We're supposed to be, and I know this is touchy language in this season, we're supposed to be a virus. Like, Christianity is supposed to virally reproduce. Like, that's it. Like, that is how at 100 AD, you had 25,000 Christians roaming the earth, and 200 years later, you had 20 million without any of the structures that we enjoy today. I mean, heck, they didn't even have the Bible the way we have the Bible today, and they grew that much. Why? Because it was about discipleship, because it was about one-on-one, one-on-two, one-on-three relationships, and that's what changed the world. And so I think for everybody listening, like, yes, Corona's been a real thing. It's been challenging, and cultural, sociological, racial unrest, all the things that we have faced, election year that we have faced, all of that stuff, though real, does not hinder the ability for the Spirit of God in His Word for people to witness to one another, to disciple one another, and to multiply. I mean, because the fact of the matter is that in the early days, believers were under real persecution, and they still got it done, right? So, when you get all us pastors together, we've preached four or five sermons here. It's what we've done.
Yes.
So guys, boy, let's just say here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get together the beginning of next year. We're gonna do this again, and we're going to make apologies for the things we said tonight, or we're gonna say that we're still on board with what we've shared. But guys,
if we're still pastors,
yeah.
If not, y'all can come be co-hosts. It doesn't pay a lot.
We're all starting a podcast together. That'll be our only form of income.
Won't pay a lot, but
guys, before we go to our final segment, which I'm also very, very excited about, I do just want to offer, because you guys have shared, I think, a fair amount to this point, but and starting with Eugene, if there is one word of sort of pastoral encouragement, or just anything that you would want to put to the folks listening, what would it be? What's something, like, what's on your heart that you want people to know?
I think that we are in a season where we are inclined toward questioning everything more than ever before. We don't trust the authorities around us. We struggle with relationships. Our ability to trust that even God has us. I think seasoned followers of Jesus are questioning things they may have never questioned before. And I think all of that is it's not all bad, because it gets to the root issues that bring up these fears that we have, that bring up these questions that we have, and it allows us to get at the things that have maybe stunted our spiritual growth. So, to everyone listening, like, just lean into Jesus at a greater depth than you ever have before. He is fully aware that we have questions. He's not surprised by any of this. He's expecting, he wants us to bring this to the table for him, to say, hey, God, I don't understand all of this. There's no shame in that. There's no shame in saying, I hate this experience right now. It is, but this season allows for us to be, I think it allows for us to be more authentic, more transparent, and at the same time, not drop our guard to the ways that the enemy wants to take these things that we're experiencing, the things we're feeling, and use it for his advantage. And so by that, I simply mean that all of these questions, all the doubts that we have, my goodness, process those things. But at the same time, keep recognizing that you have influence in your sphere. You have the responsibility to still represent Jesus in a way that is drawing people to himself. Man, if we could all grasp that message, our community is going to be different. Our neighborhoods are going to look differently. They're going to feel differently. When we bring the Spirit of God into each and every sphere of influence we have, nothing remains the same. And that's the great hope we have of bringing change to every place we go.
Beautiful.
Chris, what about you? Same question.
I would have two things I think I would add to this. Is one is your pastor is human, and he is just a voice among voices. One of the greatest lines I heard all pandemic. There's a pastor in our town. He's an older gentleman. I've just grown to love him. He called me one day. They're trying to figure out what to do with their church. We wondered what we were doing, and vice versa. We're sharing information, and he said, "Chris, I feel like I am in 1863 and I'm on a battlefield of the Civil War, and the problem is I'm wearing gray pants and a blue jacket. Everybody is shooting at me."
Yeah.
And I just thought, you know what? That is the best way to sum it up, because you can't please everybody. See your pastors as people who are trying their best. We never had a class on this in school, how to lead through a pandemic. But the second thing I would say piggybacks on what Gene, I think, so eloquently said there, is Jesus is standing before Pilate, and he says, "For this reason I came. For this I was born. For this reason I came." And it's to testify to the truth. And I think right now what we're seeing in our world is everybody has a form of truth. I think we need to turn our attention to, what does Jesus call truth? And when we find out what Jesus calls truth, then I think we can get our arms around what we're really called to do. But we have to stop making our own version of truth. Well, this is true to me. Well, I don't care what's true to you. I want to know what's true to Jesus, and he is the author and perfecter of our faith.
Amen.
Beautiful.
Amen.
Right on.
Well, guys, because we can't let any of our guests go without putting them through a special kind of punishment, it's now time for the segment we like to refer to as...
Now it's time for the Dudes and Dads Pop Quiz.
Oh, boy.
So here we go. So here's a couple random questions. So, Joel, how are we going to do this tonight?
Let's see. Andy, I'm going to have you interrogate Gene, and then I will interrogate Chris, and so we'll just go...
Perfect.
We'll go just back, boom, boom, back and
Couple
forth.
back. All right. All
Okay.
right. So first question, Gene, is going to be a real simple one. What is your favorite place to eat in the Goshen area?
Oh yeah, that is simple. It's Constant Spring. It's Goshen Brewing Company and Venturi Pizza.
The blessed Trinity.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. All right, Chris. Chris, if you were forced to play any orchestral or instrument, so any instrument within the orchestra, what would that instrument be?
Oh my word. I had to stop and think what instruments are in an orchestra. That's how bad it is. You know what? I'm all about the trombone, because I think it would be fun to try to whack the person in front of me.
Beautiful. Good answer.
Yes.
Just to mess with them a little bit.
Good.
Wow, that's a really good question. All right. So, Gene, thinking back to when you were, I almost said a child, but not really a child. When you were young, what was your first car?
A 1972 bright cherry red Duster with a white top on, but white vinyl top on it. 50s on the back and something more skinny on the front. That car lasted me all of about, I want to say 2 weeks. It was my prized possession. And those big wide tires didn't navigate a curve very well. And it was a 3-speed on the floor. I tried to shift down, hit that curb, and I flipped it into a ditch. I came out unscathed by the grace of God, but the car didn't.
Oh man.
By the way, that's the sexiest car answer we've had to this point on the show. So congratulations. And the most tragic, probably, too.
Yeah, right on.
Chris, if you were to compare your wife to any flower in the known universe, what flower would she be? Andy, please make sure you get this too. I will make sure you.
Why can't I talk about cars?
Tread carefully, brother. Tread carefully.
I'll give you the car question. I'll give you the car question later.
You gave me orchestra and flowers. I think this is unfair.
Okay, I'll even it up here. Okay.
You know, clearly the sunflower.
Ooh. And why?
I have no idea why. It's big and bold, and it makes me smile. It's bright. It adds life to my day. Make sure that she hears that one.
Beautiful.
That's a good one. We'll send that quote directly to her.
I love it, Chris. Good job. Good job.
Wow. Okay. All right. So, Gene,
I'm so scared right now.
we'll get you back on a little bit on that track here. So, what is your favorite love song?
Well, Brenda and I, oh man, I can't give our secrets.
Oh.
We
then make something up.
we were dating, sitting in a dark corner.
I love where
listening
this is going
to listening to oh my gosh, what's the name of the group? You guys, this has been a long time ago. I'm all out of love. What was
Air Supply.
Air Supply, yes. Sitting there listening to Air Supply. And that became that song comes on.
Oh, yes. Oh, game on.
Oh, man.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Chris, here we go, man. You're trapped on a desert island, and you have 3 books. And I'm going to let you off because here's the deal: us spiritual people always know, like, oh, you gotta say the Bible. You don't have to include the Bible in this list. You got 3 books that you can have with you. What are those 3 books?
Oh my word! I think I'm going to want to be on a desert island after this podcast. Yeah, the Bible. A couple of my favorite books: Church is a Team Sport, Jim Putman. Discipleship. One Size Doesn't Fit All by Gary McIntosh. Those 3 books.
Okay.
They stretch me every time I read them.
Beautiful.
All right. So my last question here is going to be, if you could meet one person, alive or dead, doesn't matter, who would that be?
I would love to meet Ben Franklin. I think he has been one of the primary characters in the history of the U.S. and his varied interests and accomplishments. You could just, I think meeting him would be just outstanding. You could talk to him for days about any topic under the sun.
Okay, Chris, final question. Which one of your children do you love more? No.
Well, that one's easy.
No.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up.
Yeah,
I can't
that's right. I can't hear.
He's rough on you today, Chris.
Oh man, no. Chris, with both Corbin and Brennan, if you could name one thing with each of them, like the one thing that you've been doing with each of them, like the most, what would that be?
I literally, you did break up for just a second. One thing
Okay, the one thing. So for each of your kids, the one thing you have enjoyed, or currently are enjoying, or have enjoyed doing the most with them. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Well, for my daughter, Bren and I, we both have an interest in photography. And so we like to hop in the truck, take off and shoot some landscape photography from time to time. Corbin, honestly, I just enjoy communicating with him. He stretches my thinking. We laugh a lot when he talks. He's probably 20 years old and smarter than me. So we enjoy playing games as a family. I enjoy game time because he brings out all kinds of facts I've never heard of before. It's kind of like Joel DeMott going on vacation and bringing out facts that you're like, boy. I'm not even sure if that's true or not. Beautiful. But I'm not smart enough to tell you you're wrong. So no, I love conversations with Corbin.
Right on.
That's good. And I should just, as a little piggyback, you mentioned game playing, and we're all Andy and his family have helped reform me in this area. I did not grow up as much of a game player. Do you have a particular favorite family game that you guys use your go-to?
There's a game, well, here again, this kind of shows Corbin. There's a game my wife's family grew up playing. It's called Masterpiece. And it's a game that's based on artwork that's found in the Chicago Institute of Art, and you bid on it, and it's a whole game about it. And they'll be like, oh, here's a painting, and Corbin will say, you know what, in real life, that's really only about 3 feet by 3 feet. And I'm going, I've never, you know, wow, very cool.
Yeah, great.
And they know the names of people, so yeah.
Amazing.
I enjoy the game time, but I learn all kinds of stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, I think I can just go out on a limb and say this has been a treat. Real treat for both Andy and I, and an incredibly helpful conversation. I think we're basically, because I'm itching. We could talk about any number of other things for an extensive period of time. So coming back in, we can say right now, coming back in 2021, you guys will be added to the elite alumni of repeat guests. I think is an absolute must.
Right.
So, elite. In fact, we're going to each send you a sweatshirt that just says elite alumni on it. That's what we're going to do.
Oh, there you go.
I got to get on making that.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I just gave Andy another job right there. But both Gene and Chris, let me just say, from the bottom of my heart, just grateful for your ministry. I'm grateful for the voice, the way that you have either directly or indirectly just spoken into my life as a leader. I'm grateful for what you're doing in our communities that we do, and this is not a self-flagellating thing. But we have being a pastor right now is just a weird and challenging thing, and I'm grateful just for your guys' faithfulness in all of it. So thanks for being an example for the kingdom of God and keeping your hand to the plow, as they say. So thank you both so much.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Thank you. Such a pleasure.
Yes, thanks again, guys, for being on the show tonight.
Yeah. Well, guys, we appreciate everybody that's tuned in tonight. We will be on a little bit of a hiatus.
Yeah,
here.
so we're gonna be. This is, like we said, the end of season 2, and so we will actually be taking all of December off. So if you don't hear from us for a while, that's why.
I'm going to California, Andy. San Diego.
Go for it. Have fun.
And that sounded really because I looked at you like I'm going to California,
and I'm
Andy's,
like, have fun.
Have fun. That was terrible for me to say.
Terrible.
I'm not going to apologize for it though. So guys, we'll be taking January off, but coming back with
December.
Get it right, Joel. We'll be taking December off and coming back in January, and we'll be obviously updating you as to when all of that is going to be going on. But we're grateful for each and every one of our listeners.
Right. We could not do this show without you guys, without your feedback, without your financial support. So we really appreciate that. It's been a really fun time, Joel, just to be able to have these 2 seasons under our belt.
It's nowhere but downhill from here, Andy. I think we've hit our pinnacle, and now we're going down. So, guys, as always, you can contact us over at dudesandadspodcast@gmail.com. Or you can go over to the website, dudesandadspodcast.com. Got all the shows there, the links, the show notes. We have a lot of show notes on these 2 guys. There's a lot of dirt we didn't even talk about. We need to put up there.
Definitely. Hit us up, write a review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts for us.
Reviews, 5 stars, all that. We love it. We love it. So, guys, appreciate each and every one of you. And until next time, grace and peace.